The British Empire, the largest empire in human history, was not built by a king. It was not built by an army. It was built by a corporation, a private trading company, 218 merchants, and one document that nobody fully understood at the time. Most people think empires are born from conquest. The British one was born from a spreadsheet, an understanding that changes everything, because the blueprint they used in 1600 never actually stopped running. It just changed its name. The year is 1600. England is a second-rate power on the edge of Europe. Spain controls the Atlantic. Portugal controls the eastern spice routes. The Ottoman Empire controls every overland road to Asia. England controls almost nothing. Queen Elizabeth I is 67 years old, childless, and running a kingdom with a thin treasury drained by decades of war. But she sees something the kings of Europe missed. You don't have to conquer territory to own it. You just have to control the trade that flows through it. On December 31st, 1600, the last day of the century, she signs a royal charter, not for a warship, not for an invasion, for a company, the East India Company. 218 London merchants pooling 68,373 pounds. One monopoly grant, one route east, one gamble that nobody in the room fully understood they were making. For the first 50 years, the East India Company was barely surviving. The Dutch controlled the Indonesian spice island. The Portuguese undercut them at every port. The Mughal Empire, the wealthiest civilization on earth at the time, barely registered their existence. But the company was patient, and patient companies are dangerous. They didn't invade. They asked permission. They planted small trading posts along the Indian coastline. Surat, Madras, Bombay, Calcutta. Not fortress, not garrison. Trading posts. Modest, polite, profitable. And quietly, methodically, over decades, they built something no trading company had ever constructed before. Their own private army. By 1750, the East India Company commanded more soldiers than the British Crown itself. Not hired guard, not mercenary. A standing, professional, trained fighting force, loyal to a company with shareholders in London. Then came June 23, 1757, the Battle of Plassey. Robert Clive, 32 years old, a former clerk who had never attended military school, led 3,000 company soldiers against the Nawab of Bengal's 50,000-man army. By every calculation on paper, he should have been destroyed before noon. He wasn't, because 3 days before the battle, Clive had paid the Nawab's own commanding general, Mir Jafar, to stand his troops down at the critical moment. The battle lasted 6 hours. By sunset, the company controlled Bengal, one of the richest, most densely populated territories in all of Asia, delivered by a bribe arranged by a former office clerk. Here is what they don't put in the textbook. After Plassey, the East India Company did not report its new territorial gains to the British government. It reported to its shareholder the tax revenue of an entire subcontinent, millions of people, hundreds of cities, centuries of accumulated wealth, flowing into a private ledger in a London office building. By 1803, the company governed more land than the British Crown had ever directly ruled. It printed its own currency. It operated its own courts. It maintained its own prison. It could sign treaties with foreign powers, declare wars on sovereign states, and execute people under its own legal authority. The British Empire, the one on every map, the one they call the largest human history, was not a government project. It was a corporate acquisition, conducted over 2 centuries, largely without public debate, and almost entirely beyond parliamentary oversight. The Crown didn't build the empire. A company built it, and the company did it by the time anyone in London fully realized what was happening. In 1858, after a violent uprising across India nearly broke the company's grip entirely, the British government finally stepped in, dissolved the East India Company by Act of Parliament, and absorbed the empire it had constructed. They called it taking direct crown control. What it actually was a government nationalizing a corporation that had grown larger, richer, and more powerful than the state itself. The largest empire in human history did not begin with a declaration of war. It began with 218 men in a room, a royal signature, and a queen who understood something quietly devastating, that the future belongs not to those who conquer land, but to those who control the terms on which everyone else does business. Elizabeth I has been dead for 400 years. The East India Company was dissolved 167 years ago, but the model, private power accumulating territory through economics and leverage, operating beyond the reach of democratic accountability, moving faster than any government could respond to, that model never stopped running. It just changes what it calls itself. The British Empire didn't start with a battle. It started with a charter. The question we're sitting with is whether the next empire already has one.